Nothing has ever changed the world as quickly as the internet. Less than a decade ago, we went down to the Pentagon to do a story on something called information warfare, or cyber war as some people called it. It involved using computers and the internet as weapons. Much of it was still theory, but we were told that before too long, it might be possible for a hacker with a computer to disable critical infrastructure in a major city and disrupt essential services, to steal millions of dollars from banks all over the world, infiltrate defense systems, extort millions from public companies, and even sabotage our weapons systems. Today, it's not only possible, all of that has actually happened, plus a lot more we don't even know about. It's why President Obama has made cyber war defense a top national priority, and why some people are already saying the next big war is less likely to begin with a bang than a blackout.
Can you imagine your life without electric power? When the president rolled out his...
Until February of this year, retired Admiral Mike McConnell was the nation's top spy. As Chief of National Intelligence, he oversaw the Central Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Agency. Few people know as much about cyber warfare and our dependency on the power grid and the computer networks that deliver our oil and gas, pump and purify our water, keep track of our money, and operate our transportation systems.
If I were an attacker and I wanted to do strategic damage to the United States, I would either take the cold of winter or the heat of summer. I probably would attack electric power on the U.S. East Coast, maybe the West Coast, and attempt to cause a cascading effect. All of those things are in the art of the possible from a sophisticated attacker.
Do you believe our adversaries have the capability of bringing down a power grid?
I do.
Is the U.S. prepared for such an attack?
No, the United States is not prepared for such an attack.
It's now clear this cyber threat is one of the most serious economic and national security challenges we face as a nation.
4 months after taking office, President Obama made those concerns part of our national defense policy, declaring the country's digital infrastructure a strategic asset and confirming that cyber warfare had moved beyond theory.
We know that cyber intruders have probed our electrical grid, and that in other countries, cyber attacks have plunged entire cities into darkness.
President Obama didn't say which country had been plunged into darkness, but a half a dozen sources in the military, intelligence, and private security communities have told us the president was referring to Brazil. Several prominent intelligence sources confirmed that there were a series of cyber attacks in Brazil, one north of Rio de Janeiro in January of 2005 that affected 3 cities and tens of thousands of people, and another much larger event beginning on September 26, 2007. That one, in the state of Espírito Santo, affected more than 3 million people in dozens of cities over a 2-day period, causing major disruptions. In Vitoria, the world's largest iron ore producer had 7 plants knocked offline, costing the company $7 million. It is not clear who did it or what the motive was, but the people who do these sorts of things are no longer teenagers making mischief. They're now likely to be highly trained soldiers with the Chinese army, or part of an organized crime group in Russia, Europe, or the Americas.
In 2007, we probably had our electronic Pearl Harbor. It was an espionage Pearl Harbor. Some unknown foreign power, and honestly we don't know who it is, broke into the Department of Defense, to the Department of State, the Department of Commerce, probably the Department of Energy, probably NASA. They broke into all of the high-tech agencies, all of the military agencies, and downloaded terabytes of information.
Terabytes?
A terabyte is, it's hard to say. The Library of Congress, which has millions of volumes, is about 12 terabytes. So we probably lost the equivalent of a Library of Congress worth of government information in 2007.
All stolen by foreign countries?
Yeah. This was a serious attack, and that's really what made people wake up and say, hey, we've got to get a grip on this.
But since then, there has been an even more serious breach of computer security, which Lewis called the most significant incident ever publicly acknowledged by the Pentagon. Last November, someone was able to get past the firewalls and encryption devices of one of the most sensitive U.S. military computer systems and stay inside for several days.
This was the CENTCOM network, the command that's fighting our two wars. And some foreign power was able to get into their networks and sit there and see everything they did.
What do you mean, sit there?
They could see what the traffic was, they could read documents, they could interfere with things. It was like they were part of the American military command.
Lewis believes it was done by foreign spies who left corrupted thumbnail drives or memory sticks lying around in places where U.S. military personnel were likely to pick them up. As soon as someone inserted one into a CENTCOM computer, a malicious code opened a back door for the foreign power to get into the system. So presumably nobody at the Pentagon is plugging in...
They've banned them.
How much of this are we doing? We, meaning the United States.
We're in the top of the league, you know. We're as good as
So whatever foreign countries are doing to the United States is doing to them.
We are in the top of the league. We are really good. And if you talk to the Russians or the Chinese, they say, how can you complain about us when you do exactly the same thing? It's a fair point with one exception. We have more to steal. We have more to lose. We're the place that depends on the internet. We've done the most to take advantage of it. We're the ones who've woven it into our economy and to our national security in ways that they haven't. So we are more vulnerable.
There are thousands of attempted attacks every single day, tens of thousands of attacks.
Sean Henry's job is to police potential targets all over the United States. He is an assistant director of the FBI in charge of the Bureau's cyber division. He told us that criminals have used the internet to steal more than $100 million from U.S. banks so far this year, and they did it without ever having to draw a gun or pass a note to a teller.
I've seen attacks where there's been $10 million lost in one 24-hour period. If that had happened in a bank robbery where people walked in with guns blazing, that would have been headline news all over the world.
And the bank probably didn't want it known.
Certainly, when there's a network breach, the owners of the network are not keen to have it known that their network was breached because of their concern that it might impact their business.
The case Henry mentioned didn't involve just one bank, it involved 130. All of them victimized through an international network of ATMs, an international caper that required dozens of participants on 3 different continents. How did they do it?
It's a sophisticated operation, clearly organized, where adversaries access the computer network, were able to gain information from multiple accounts. They were able to decrypt PIN numbers, and then taking that data, able to manufacture white plastic that enabled them access to get into ATM accounts.
What's white plastic?
Take a piece of plastic that's similar in size and shape and weight to an ATM card.
They've got the card, they've got the PIN number, and they just drained the accounts.
Almost $10 million in a 24-hour period.
What cities?
49 cities around the world. In Europe, in North America, South America, Asia, all over the world.
Do you have any idea what country these people were from?
Yes.
You care to share that with me?
I would not.
You would not care to share it?
No.
Have you caught any of them?
Working on it.
Of all the critical components of the U.S. infrastructure, the power grid is one of the most vulnerable to cyber attack. That's because the power grid is run and regulated by private utilities, which are unbeholden to government security decrees.
I'll walk through the steps an attacker might take.
Here at the Sandia National Laboratories, Department of Energy specialists like John Mulder try to hack into the computer systems of power and water companies and other sensitive targets in order to figure out the best way to sabotage them. It's all done with the company's permission in order to identify their vulnerabilities. And this is a graphic demonstration of how they could have destroyed an oil refinery by sending out code that caused a crucial component to overheat.
The first thing you would do is turn it to manual control so that your automatic controls aren't protecting you.
What would be your main target here?
The heating element and the recirculator pump. If we could malfunction both of those, we could cause an explosion.
How realistic is this?
It's very realistic.
But the companies are under no obligation to fix the vulnerabilities.
I look at this as like a pre-9/11 moment, where we identify a problem, we identify a threat, we know it exists, we know it's real, and we don't move quickly enough to fix the problem.